Have you ever looked in the mirror and thought like why, you still have small calves or your delts or like any muscle group that it just seems to be lacking even after training them? They just don't respond as good. This video is for you because the truth is not every muscle group is equally hard to build naturally. Some muscles respond pretty well with decent training, diet, and but some stay stubborn for years, even when you're doing everything you can. Um, in this video, I'm going to be ranking the hardest muscle to develop naturally from lifting experience, what I've seen from other naturals, and how much genetics seem to matter, and how hard these muscles are to actually make look impressive. And we're going to be ranking top 7. This isn't me saying everybody's the same. Obviously, genetics play a huge role, but for most natural lifters, these are the body parts that seem to take the most time and the most effort. So let's move on. Criteria and what I'm ranking by. So I'm ranking it by a few things. How much genetic matters, how hard the muscle is to isolate well, how long it takes to actually look impressive, and how often natural lifters completely butcher the training. So there's a few criteria that you have to remember before we get into this. And a short disclaimer, this is based on my natural lifting experience. I've been training for like 5, 6 years now, and this is universal. This is not universal. Genetics matter a lot, like I said before, so that could be the starting point. Like you could have massive calves or massive forearms. I personally have decent forearms but not calves, unfortunately. And like your potential, like how far you can like grow that muscle, any muscle. And this is for most lifters, not every lifter. There are always exceptions, but this is for most people. Ugh, I'm just looking down here because my camera is not attached to my laptop, and the PowerPoint is like here. And my camera, I'm using my phone, which you can see. I can't get rid of this because I'm not subscribed. My phone is up here. I'm using that as a camera, as a webcam. And I have my computer down here, which I'm going through the PowerPoint with you guys. All right, we're gonna go from 7 to 1. So the seventh muscle group that I think is hardest to grow would be hamstrings. Now I say hamstring because it is not the hardest muscle, like I would say, no, ever to grow, but it definitely is more stubborn. And a lot of lifters technically train hamstrings, but not in a way that it actually makes them grow. They'll throw in a couple lazy leg curls after destroying calves. I mean, quads, not calves, and call it a day. I've noticed. Me personally, I've done that before. Put hamstring like at the end or not really focusing on that too much. And so hamstring required focus training. It's not really due to genetic limits. I think a lot of people just don't know how to train their hamstrings hard. And many lifters, they rush hamstring sets or underload hip hinge exercises, which I really think they should focus. Have like a separate hamstring day or a hamstring focus day. And then this really does limit your muscle growth on hamstrings. To have a really well developed looking hamstring, it requires a lot of picnic, a lot of thickness, density, especially from the side and the back. And number 6 is lats. I have lats ranked at number 6 because I think they're misunderstood. Lats are often mistaken as fully trained through rows and pull downs, which mainly engages arm and upper back. And I think back overall, a lot of people have them as their hardest point to one of the hardest area to grow due to the mind muscle connection it requires, and you need to have at least some sort of experience to actually have that connection with your back. And your arms and forearm usually take over for most people in the beginning stage. And proper lat training technique, effective lat training requires like control, intentional elbow path. You do need to go heavy and intense with your back, especially the lower lats. I think a lot of people lack that thickness, that lower back thickness here. A lot of people either have this or they don't, because I've noticed some people will never really have that thick lower lat. insertion right here, which is genetic, by the way. You can train it, but to a certain point. So this comes with your genetic. You're just either born with it or you're not. Perfect example would be like Akeem William. You can look him up. He used to kind of have it, but it did disappear over time. Same with Big Ramy. He had it, but he kind of injured it, or I don't know what happened. But other bodybuilders like Ian Valliere, he never really had a lower lat insertion. His lat kind of just stops around here. But yeah, back is number six. We'll just call it lats. Lats number six. Number five, I have arms and especially the triceps. Let's talk about triceps. So tricep, the importance of tricep. It takes up most of your arm, like compared to bicep. It is a bigger muscle group than your bicep. To have an impressive arm, you need to have big triceps, especially from the back and the side. It really fills into your frame and into your shirts. Training challenges, I think that casually or inconsistent training often fails to produce significant tricep growth. By that I mean you need to really focus on the long head. When you train your tricep, start with the long head, go intense, go heavy. If you do have some sort of elbow issues, which I do, tricep tendonitis, you should we won't talk about it here in this video, but you need to really warm up your elbow first before you can do heavy tricep training. And tricep, like any other muscle group, it requires years of progressive loading and discipline, rest, diet, all of that, correct training, and genetics and social media distortion can affect your realistic expectation for arm development. Um, for example, my tricep here, the lateral outside here, I've always sort of had it, but the long head took a long time for me to get it up to this point. It's still not as big, and it, probably won't get any bigger, in my opinion, naturally, because as you can see, the insertion, at least on this end, the long head, is not super low. I have friends and I've seen people with even better insertion for the long head. And there I noticed, especially in the front double by and I don't know, other poses, it really makes up that full 3D arm look. So coming up at number four, we have the chest, specifically the upper chest. I think that upper chest often do lag due to incorrect exercise angle. By that I mean you need to prioritize hitting the upper chest before you continue on to your chest workout and make sure your front delt and tricep don't take the load too much. Your general bench press or just chest workout, it does not guarantee upper chest development, and certain movements, specifically incline and how much you flare your elbow and bar path, does matter. And a well-developed upper chest can contribute to a fuller balanced physique, and it takes time and consistency. So just to be more specific, what I do to target the upper chest in my workouts, that I've always been hitting it first before I've always been doing incline movements first before I do any other chest movements. So that could be incline, Smith, but anything incline, I always start with that just because the upper portion of your chest is just harder to grow, and it's just harder to contract. What you should do is, if you're like a more advanced lifter, instead of doing your traditional like tucking your elbow, I mean tucking your shoulder bench, you kind of want to do the opposite. I know it's scary, but you should start off with lighter weight and focus on having that mind muscle connection and slow down and sort of, instead of being safe in doing this, you can flare your elbow out. I mean your shoulder and your elbow, and kind of bench in a way where you're trying to do this. And I know it goes against the narrative of like, you don't want to like injure your stuff. But if you start off slow and you train your way up, I've noticed I feel my upper chest a lot more. And especially when I'm doing incline Smith or any incline movement, I go really high. Like I don't bench. The bar hits like almost up to my neck. When I do upper chest, collarbone to neck, you want to keep it here and just go like this. Try to go like this. And make sure you start off light though, and you just build up that strength and confidence over time. And once you familiarize yourself with the movement over time, you'll build a better bar path and connection to your chest. All right, so here's an example of mine. Although I did have a pump when I was taking these pictures, but yeah, the upper chest right over here. We're not talking about this. This is easy to get. We're talking about this. You got to really, really focus on bringing this part up. All right, number three, we have rear delts, which are these little, where's my mouse? These little bumps right here in the back of your arm. Delts are very neglected. A lot of people don't really train them as hard as they could be, and they're, less visible. You don't really get to see them. And misconception, many lifter believe that row, quick reverse flies, they can train your delts effectively, but usually your traps or momentum, I've seen from myself and other people that it takes over the rear delt. And it is important to isolate rear delts and apply progressive overload, just like knee muscle group, to really grow them. Having a fully developed rear delt can really enhance your physique visually from the side and even from the front, and especially from the back. So to really hit the rear delt, you need to learn how to, I would say, build tension. Don't lose the tension of the rear delt. It's easy when you're doing pec fly, reverse pec fly, to feel your traps and your upper delt too. I mean, your rear delt too. But I think once you get tired, the trap or the neck sometimes even takes over, or even my tricep, I feel it when I'm not doing it properly. So you need to really put a focus on your rear delt. Most likely, most of you guys have probably underdeveloped rear delts. So it's pretty common for a lot of people to have smaller rear delts compared to front, especially, or even side. And number two, we have the side delt. Having a well-developed side delt, it will make you have that wider frame, that wider look, especially if you're narrow, like if you have more of a narrow clavicle, you need to really focus on getting that side delt width out so that it can pop out a lot more when you're wearing t-shirts and so and so. And I would say, me personally, training side delt is probably my least favorite exercise in my opinion. I still hate it to this day. I've never really liked it. That's why they're kind of underdeveloped. But at the same time, it's also genetic and it's also because I'm natural, I think, but maybe it's just an excuse. But side delts does require precision and high quality training, high quality reps. Common mistake could be like ego lifting, heavy weight, using too much momentum, your traps, and losing that tension when you're doing lateral raises. Just like any muscle group, it does take a long time, naturally, of course, years to develop a fully capped delt. And for most people, you're never really gonna have that crazy cap looking delt. But like I said, this is for most people. And here it kind of looked like I have one, but I really don't. It's just the angle, and also I had a shoulder pump that day. But to get that really capped out, I've noticed most natural guys don't really have it. That's why I have delt as number two. And here are a few honorable mentions. First, we have forearms. They are stubborn to develop. And me personally, I've never really directly trained my forearms, but they did grow from just working out, just hitting back, bicep, or just over time, over the years of working out. They just kind of just blew up by themselves. So I never really tried to really train them, but they are heavily genetically determined. I for sure. I have friends that do the same thing and they have big forearms, and I also had friends that kind of lack that forearm. Trap development and traps, I would say the heavier you lift, the more it just developed naturally. So if you're not really that, you know, really strong dude, if you're not really that heavy lifting type of guy, you're not really gonna have that. Most people don't want to lift that heavy to prevent injury and such. So a lot of people do have smaller traps. And another one would be abdominal. To have a really thick ab, I think you can definitely grow your ab in terms of size, but you're never gonna have that super really well developed abs that stick out that some people do have. Look at C1, for example. I don't know if he directly trained his ab, but compared to other people, his abs are kind of washed out. Like they're flat, they're defined, but they're not as they don't really pop out as much. And it requires a lot of training, and you need to be simply lean. Some people can't do that. So this is just one thing. So that's why ab is one of the harder muscle group to grow. The last one would be undertrained glutes. And me personally, I don't have the biggest glutes. I don't really have it that much, to be honest, because some people end up using their. I'm more of a quad dominant type of person. So me personally, every time I do any leg movements like squats, leg press, just any sort of leg movements, my quads would always just take over, and I have to really put an emphasis on my glutes to feel any sort of activation. And even when I'm doing RDL or hip thrust even, I feel my hamstring a lot easier than my glutes. To really feel the glutes, I need to do like a hip thrust just for like high reps, just nonstop. And then eventually I'll feel my glutes activate. But some people do have, just glutes, you've seen it before. But yeah, the glutes are genetic and also depends on I think your biomechanic and whether or not you're naturally more of a quad dominant person or hamstring and such. So yeah. And surprise, calves. So I would say genetics matter the most when it comes to calves because you could be born with the highest of high calf muscle insertion or the lowest of lowest calf muscle insertion. If you're born with short calf insertion, like me for an example, you have to wear long socks or otherwise, even if you do train your calves and they do develop and they do grow, they won't get to that like impressive look because the muscle belly is just so short. And so it just ends up looking kind of weird. But at the same time, it just won't get to that size. It won't, ever get any lower. So high frequency training alone is not enough. It's hard to make them look noticeably bigger from the starting point, in my opinion. They do change, they do develop and grow if you emphasize and if you focus on them, like doing them first on leg days, which is what I do nowadays. They do improve a little bit, but they don't ever get to that impressive size that you always like dream of having if you have small calves. And if you have small calves and high insertion, like if you're wearing socks, especially if you're wearing shorts, you need to wear long socks because otherwise you're just revealing all that tendon and all that shin. And especially if you have small joints, yeah, you really got to cover up the bottom portion with white socks. Otherwise, it just looks funny. So, calves, you're either born with it. I have friends who they just have calves genetically. They don't train their legs, they don't train their calves. It's just there. There are a few outliers like that do have higher calf insertion, but it's just the size they're able to pack on. It's just there. And most guys that have higher calf insertion will always have an underwhelming looking calves compared to people that have, longer muscle bellies. If you do have, calves, you're gonna have them for life. And if you don't have it, it sucks. But I train mine and you see I'm all vascular and so, but they're not really my, standout physique. They're not really my standout muscle group even though I train definitely harder than most people. But and for years, but they just kind of get to a point where they look all right, especially with the pump and so. But they're never really gonna get to that point where people don't accuse me of, oh, you skip leg day, oh, you have chicken leg. It's just what it is. And so, final takeaway: the truth is that hard muscle takes years to build. With any muscle group, they take a long time to build naturally, but these muscle groups that I've mentioned, they take a little bit even longer time. So hard muscle takes even longer time, and your genetic matters a lot, like we talked about your like calves, for example, or forearms. And execution matter, how you execute the movement and how well you're able to perform for every rep. And consistency matters a lot more than you think. If you're not consistent with anything, none of this matters. So you have to have that drive, you have to be consistent. So for you guys, what was or what is the most stubborn muscle group to grow? For me personally, it was It is definitely calves. Mm, I would say my lat, but specifically from the front from the front point of view. So I'm talking about right here, not from behind. And glutes, a little bit of hamstring, but it's because I've been training them incorrectly. So I've been making some improvements on them though. But for me personally, it's those two. Oh, and abs. I don't really train them too hard, but I don't really have that sort of like 3D abs that some people have. I don't really have that blocky ab, genetically speaking. And upper chest used to be my one of my stubborn group, but over time I've learned how to train them more efficiently and correctly. So I've been able to make it match with the rest of my chest. Anyway, if you found this video helpful, let me know. Drop it down in the comment section below. Like the video, and I'll be making more videos like this. Um, yeah, so subscribe, like, comment, and I'll see you on the next video.